As the Chief Customer and Brand Officer and member of the Group Executive Board of the Mahindra Group, Asha Kharga is the group's brand custodian and leads its corporate brand, customer data and experience globally. Asha is joining me today to shed light on how Mahindra builds an enduring legacy in a highly complex consumer and media age, and how a strong sense of purpose is fuel for the brand and business. Hello and welcome to CNBC TV18 and Media Dialogues with Storyboard 18. Asha, it's lovely to have you here with me today.
Finally, Delshad. We've been speaking about it for a long time, so absolutely delighted to speak with you.
Thrilled as well, Asha, and let me just get straight into it. We know Mahindra, it's a legacy brand, it's a household name, but the immediate association with Mahindra and Mahindra is auto. That's where your brain goes to first, and that's the overall sort of mass perception that there is. So tell me, as the chief brand custodian of the corporate brand, how has that journey been for you to sort of, in a sense, reshape that perception? Because Mahindra is a lot more than auto. So tell me a little bit about how you have reshaped that.
So firstly, you're absolutely right. I think the dominant perception comes from the automotive business. And I think it's been an exciting and interesting journey in the evolution of the brand, because our goal ultimately is to be recognized as a large Indian conglomerate with our foothold in technology with Tech Mahindra. You have Mahindra Finance, you've got Mahindra Real Estate. We're the largest tractor company in the world, #1 by volume. So there are a lot of stories that need to be told, and decisive awareness needs to be created about a larger group at play. And the reason why auto is really so prominent is because it's really a very exciting range of products. It's more customer-centric, so therefore a larger footprint. A lot of consumers buy
iconic products,
iconic
well, right?
products,
products that have shaped the category in many
Absolutely.
ways, with the Scorpio, for instance, or the Thar. So it's that
as we call it,
Yeah.
authentic, true blue SUVs. So therefore, they've kind of defined perception in people's minds. But I'd just like to deviate a bit and tell you a bit. When I was joining Mahindra, and
in a role that was
in a role that
completely new for the first time ever as a chief customer and brand officer.
Yes. So one had to really think through how does one shape this role, and that's the exciting part about some of these new roles, because you're given a canvas on which you can really paint what's the agenda and you can shape the agenda. But the interesting part I wanted to tell you is that when I was joining the company, I spoke to two sets of people. So one is, of course, family and friends, but the other is I was just talking to my driver, who's been with me for more than a decade, and I told him I'm joining Mahindra, and his first reaction was, "Oh, very good. They are बहुत अच्छे लोग हैं, madam." And I was quite curious about the words "अच्छे लोग," "अच्छा company है," was one way that he articulated. And then I spoke to two mentors who are CEOs in large listed companies, and they used the words ethical, well-governed organization. And I felt both these sets of people did not say anything about products or services or anything about the offerings of the company, but instead they spoke about something far deeper. And I felt there is something there which I think people recognize. And I think it's important to really be able to tangibilize what they are saying and be able to tell that story. So the first thing I did was to really go back into the past, because that's something that when a lot of new people come into a role, they're like, how do I now start saying new stuff? But I think it's important to go back into the past, because where you come from can determine where you will go. So the most important artifact that I came across was this print ad, which was actually released in 1945, 2 years before Indian independence, 80 years ago, which actually spoke about no products or services. And it was Mahindra and Mohammed.
Yes.
It's an iconic piece of communication. No products or services, only values with which the company would operate. Now, those values actually form the bedrock of RISE. And, you may say that, purpose as a word was not defined then. But to me, that's the shorthand for purpose. That's the shorthand for what we call RISE today. And what we have tried to do as a team is to just make sure that whatever we put out on the corporate brand actually is closest to what was articulated there. So there were values like meritocracy, there were values like ethics, there were values like diversity and inclusion, things that are quite woke today, but they were there then.
Buzzwords today.
Buzzwords today, but equally relevant today. So we've said that, here's something. So therefore, a lot of the employees internally, and that's very important for corporate brands.
Absolutely.
And that's the difference between product and corporate brands.
Again, it's interesting to me because, of course, you have this fantastic brand to work with, but to your point about how to make that tangible,
Right.
where you have, again, like you put it, how have you made that tangible across the stakeholders chain?
Yeah, so there is a danger that a corporate brand tends to look at logos, taglines, identity, and that of course is hygiene. So you need to have a consistent visual identity, because it's finally the Mahindra name. So how it's represented across various group companies is very important. So one is the way it looks visually. But the second bit, which is about tangibilizing, and I can give you 3 examples. Firstly, we said this is RISE, which is what we said is, driving positive change in the lives of our communities to enable them to rise. That's a simple way we say that you have to work with communities so that you create positive impact. So the first way we bring it to life is really through culture. And by that, I mean all the festivals that we have created over the last 2 decades. So Dilshad, very recently we tied up with Disney Hotstar, and we actually took that content, which is our own IP.
Right.
So you will never find the corporate brand doing logo sponsorships. So we'll never say Mahindra presents some art and craft festival. So that's not how we operate. It has to be something that we own, and something that we, I would say, own the experience entirely from end to end. And that, I think, is a bit of, appealing to different kinds of communities, because we have customers who come there, we have the intelligentsia who comes there. We work with local arts, craftsmen, musicians, because this is again what I call subverting a popular trend. Typically what brands would do, and product brands would look at popular culture, they look at Bollywood, they look at commercializing, they look at what's trending. What the corporate brand is doing is to actually pick up art and culture which could potentially die tomorrow, which has possibly fewer people coming and attending those kind of events. But what we end up doing is actually creating a much deeper connect with the communities.
Authentic connection.
Much more authentic. It is in those locations. So you will find percussion in Bangalore, you will find Sanat Kada in Lucknow, you will find Mahindra Kabira Festival in Varanasi, you'll find theatre in Delhi, you'll find independence rock and blues in Mumbai. So art and music and crafts belonging to various parts of the country, and no peddling of products. So you won't find some jazzy vehicle of ours at the entrance. You won't find Club Mahindra trying to solicit leads or trying to get conversions or giving the best rates for finance. So that's something we would not do. So that, I think, is a very important part of making RISE come alive. The second one, which is most dear to my heart, is Nanni Kali.
Yes,
and and I'm saying this as a product marketer in a past life, is that I used to meet consumers, right, who are using your products. When you go and meet these girls, they are all of 14, 15 years old, sometimes even younger, and you see what education, or what I call what we offer beyond education, which is what we call 21st century skills, which is just soft skills. The confidence to be able to stand up and talk in a classroom. The confidence to be able to tell your father that I must go to school and I must get a vocation. I just feel it's far more fulfilling than just product. And I feel this actually affects girls in a much wider way, it's in a much deeper way. And I'm quite delighted to say that more than 50% of our donors are actually non-Mahindra companies. So a lot of other brands actually come on board because it's such a well-governed program. And I think we've been able to do this even before CSR actually came into the lexicon.
Yes. Because it's a program that's been running for quite a while
From
now.
1996,
Exactly. So there is certainly that authenticity that we spoke about.
Correct.
And also it's interesting to me because it's essentially, it's shaping the future. But when it comes to linking, for instance, purpose to linking this new bottom line, which is people, planet, purpose, to something like your business goals, your profits. How do you see that connection? And is it more challenging, or is it easier now to make that connection or get all stakeholders on board with the mission?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. In fact, a lot of businesses actually shy away from coming onto this platform because I think the bigger challenge is that it's not interlinked with business. That the minute if it's outside business, then for a CEO to look at it very closely becomes a challenge. And I think our journey has been to integrate sustainability into business and therefore make it what I call a perfect combination of purpose meets profit. And let me share two examples with you. One is, it's a boring example because sustainability is not glamorous. But I think it's an important one because if you look at us today in 2023, we are producing double the number of vehicles with the same amount of energy that we were using in 2009. And it's nothing but energy productivity, as we call it. 3,000 projects have gone into place, 3,000 actions have gone into place to make that happen. There is no silver bullet. So it's not like somebody did something magical and then this happened. But the way people have rallied around it, the way technology has been leveraged, the way raw material has been leveraged, the way processes have been changed, we are seeing a direct impact in business, right? Because if you're using half the energy for double the productivity, for double the output in the last 14 years, then there is clearly something which is at work. So I think these kind of things are absolutely important to really make this relevant for CEOs and businesses. Right. The second is water positivity. So we are a water positive company. And many of our resorts are water positive. Sustain, which is our renewable energy business, is again water positive. In fact, there is a beautiful film that we have done on Zahirabad. If you have the time, Dilshad, do take a look at it because
I have actually. It's a lovely film. Lovely.
And that was the initiative taken by the factory.
And it's so interesting that you make it. It's made relevant. For accessible in concept and idea also, and relevant to the community as well.
So we humanize that.
Yes, you humanize it, right?
Because that
entire idea of marriages, weddings, which let's face it, Indians are obsessed with.
Correct. So, and just imagine that a village in a particular district is not getting brides because of water scarcity, and that was actually said by a team member in the factory. And because we were just listening to so much of technical information that the water table has fallen and therefore now the groundwater recharging has happened. That's the language which you normally get around sustainability.
And people zone out.
Yes, and people zone out. So we said, can you just say what you just said again? And he said, yeah, now I hear that more marriages are happening in the community outside the factory. And we wanted to, make sure that that was a true fact. So we met a deputy sarpanch from the village who corroborated that. And then we said, we have a story here because how does water positivity create more marriages in that district? And I think it was quite entertaining.
And it's amazing. Insights, fantastic insights can come from anywhere, right?
Absolutely.
You have to be constantly listening. But let me sort of come to dial back to this point on some of the other initiatives that you mentioned as well. Long running, Nani Kali, all the cultural festivals that Mahindra has been doing for a very long time. And there's a very strong link of the brand with that, right? What are some of the measures of success of these initiatives? What are you measuring?
Right.
How do you define success for initiatives like Nali Kali or any of the cultural festivals?
Yeah. So it's a good question because sometimes in these kind of roles, you tend to think about this as, are these only inputs, and how do you look at output measures? So one is we definitely have a brand track that we measure regularly, consistently. And I think we look for attributes with respect to how well are you doing to serve societies, and are you known beyond your products and services? How much do people trust you? And are you doing enough for the planet? Are you doing enough for social impact? And we definitely measure those scores on a regular basis. We look at reputation. So for example, how do people talk about you? So qualitative measures are really important. We are able to track them in real time on social. For a long time, people did not know that Nani Kali is actually a Mahindra initiative. And I was a part of many juries, and I did not know that Nani Kali actually belongs to Mahindra. So I think our intent has been to kind of get that link to grow stronger, and therefore in that sense, build a brand which is known for for doing something for communities beyond just products and services. The other bit that we see is whenever it comes to any external conversations, when we go and talk about the brand to investors, or when we go to campuses, or when we are talking to even what I would call the media at large, and and they see they see aspects about us which they hadn't been exposed to earlier, then we know that, oh, this is how people want to join us. And for me, employees are a very important aspect. So B schools are a very important aspect. I think it's important for them to actually consider Mahindra as an organization that they would want to join. And we do see
and they are getting even more demanding in terms of matching their values to a corporation's values, right? And I think that is where this piece fits in.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Because at one end, you're competing with startups. There used to be a time when you competed with consulting. Now you're competing with startups because they're so agile. There's so much of action there.
Glitzy.
Yeah, it's glitzy.
Yeah.
There's so much of action. There's a lot of money, and it's a very attractive place to go. But I think Gen Z, we tend to think of them as people who are, we have certain perceptions about them. But I do feel they are looking at values, they are looking at culture, they're looking at what kind of an organization am I joining, and how does this integrate into my life. And I think therefore brands like ours, and long established brands actually have that advantage of being relevant to this audience, and we as corporate brands can really make can actually shape those perceptions when it comes to building a brand image.
Asha, now, I mean, Mahindra, of course, is a global company as well. Your role is a global role. Um, how challenging is it to then, in a sense, unify this culture, this value system, the bedrock that you spoke of, for different cultures, different places, different geographies? Points of relevance are different, sources of authority are different. What has been the most challenging aspect of that for you?
When we launched Rise, it was very, or rather when we relaunched Rise, because we contemporized it to make it more relevant in today's context. While the core purpose remained intact, we brought in aspects related to ESG, we brought in aspects related to being a future-ready company and creating value for all. And these were, in that sense, new messages within the framework of Rise. It was very tempting to go and talk about this in an external context, because that's what brands do, right? Let me go and announce to the world that there is a new relaunch or there is a new message. But we took 6 months to actually cascade this across 250,000 employees in more than 100 countries. Wow. With different nationalities. Because it was most important for them to know that there has been a refresh. The last thing you want to do is to put it out on media and then people wonder what's happening, and is the corporate philosophy changing? What are these new messages?
Yeah, people don't feel on board with the change.
Yeah, they don't feel on board. Yeah. And that's really important in the journey.
That ownership,
that ownership is really important. So right from the group executive board, where this was cascaded, and then to the top 100 leaders, and then the CEOs took it to each of their organizations to explain what is the revised framework all about. So that was a journey, and I think it's very important to take internal employees along with you. And once that is done, when people believe that, look, I saw this before it was sent to the world, I think the ownership is far greater. In fact, I see most of the Rise actions integrated into business and actions within the business. So whether you look at ESG, what I spoke to you about Nanikali, or whether I spoke to you about even Zahirabad, right? That's now a part of the Rise framework. I don't need to go and tell that, what are you doing on ESG? So they know you have to take actions on Rise for a more equal world, which is really about actions related to ESG. Second, when it comes to creating future-ready businesses, are you creating digital twins? Are you stuck in a brick and mortar legacy? Are you making sure that you're landing a great customer experience? Are you making sure that you have enough innovations in your business? That again is crafted within the Rise pillars. And the last pillar is about value creation, which is a lot about growth. It's about scale, and it's about being entrepreneurial. So are you creating businesses which can be scaled up and which are going to be big businesses with great footprints? So when you have a purpose which is articulated in a way that combines business and combines your purpose really well, then your actions, are linked to that. And in fact, I
And it
feel
gets
that
more intuitive
it
then.
gets more intuitive. You're not saying things outside, oh, here are things I'm going to say outside and here is what I'm going to do. So I think they've found a beautiful integration, and that's what makes it really work. So I think when I think about brand custodianship, I really look at reputation very closely. What's the kind of sentiment, negative, positive? If something went wrong, how did we kind of correct for it? What's the kind of narrative that's being written about us? And that's now available with technology at the click of a finger.
Absolutely.
So that's, and as I said, because it's so many countries where operations in that sense are within those companies, right? One has to be really working very collaboratively with leadership.
Without being very overbearing, or
Yes.
without not giving that kind of autonomy that is required
Right.
for and ownership,
And
but
ownership.
autonomy.
Yeah.
I think that's critical, and let me get into a little bit more future facing.
Right.
2025, AI is all the talk everywhere in the world right now. There's hype, there's fear. What do you see happening in 2025? What are the big trends? What do we need to watch out for in marketing and media, and for for brand custodians everywhere?
So I think some aspects will always be consistent, Dilshad. So for example, I feel what's happening right now is the rise of regionalization and vernacular language. I think that aspect we all need to master. So when we talk about hyper personalization, I think right down to the to regional languages, hyper regional, yes, is absolutely pertinent, and therefore imagine we tend to spam customers in English, a language that we are most familiar with. So what does that entail for regional customers who are possibly taking personal loans or small ticket loans or business loans, and therefore how do we kind of customize that for the customer? The second bit, I think, is going to be the rise of influencers, and we've seen it in auto. Customers are, gone are the days when you could beam 60-second television commercials at customers. Today, they're actually looking for reviews, they're actually comparing prices, and therefore, when they come onto your website, how hyper-personalized is it? And how are you using AI to tell me that this is, if I'm somebody who really looks at colors of vehicles in a different way, then how are you really able to spot trends? And how can you tell me that this is going to be a color of the future? And how does it go into product design to say that, chrome yellow is going to be a thing of the future, electric blue is going to be a thing of the future? So I think, being hyper personalization is one thing, but trend spotting through AI is also going to be a big thing. And the third bit, which is my learning, is about sustainability, and especially when it comes to it being a buzzword when it comes to brands. I feel customers actually look for great experiences when it comes to products, and in the trade-off between sustainability and great experience, I don't think consumers will buy something just because it's sustainable, but it doesn't give a great experience. So even when we think about our products, we make sure that that lifestyle is not compromised, refinement is not compromised, and if you then combine it with sustainability, I think it can.
It's a winning combination.
It's a winning
If
combination.
you can find a way to bridge that gap.
Yes.
What stops us from
because finally they are objects of desire, right? So objects of desire delivered in a sustainable way can create great magic.
It's a great way to wrap up our conversation. Thank you so much for your time, Asha.
Thank you so much, Dilshad.